They called me the naive housewife who couldn't survive without him. My husband paraded his mistress while his lawyer smirked at my silence, but when those courtroom doors opened and my father walked in, their faces went white. They had no idea who I really was. My name is Lillian, and for 8 years I played the role of the perfect, simple wife. I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone hide who they really are? But you have to understand, I grew up watching gold diggers circle my father like vultures. Robert Castellano, maybe you've heard the name. He owns one of the largest agricultural empires in the country, thousands of acres of farmland, food processing plants, distribution networks spanning 12 states. Growing up, I never knew if people liked me or for what my last name could give them. So when I met Derek at a friend's barbecue, I introduced myself as Lillian Morris, my mother's maiden name. He was charming, confident, worked in pharmaceutical sales. He didn't look at me like a prize to be won. He just looked at me like a woman he wanted to know. For the first time in my life, I felt seen for who I was, not what I had. We fell in love. At least I thought we did. I never told him about my father's wealth. I never mentioned the trust fund sitting in an account I never touched, or the fact that I had a degree in agricultural economics from Cornell. I wanted a marriage built on love, not on what I could provide. My father warned me. He said, "Lily, hiding who you are isn't the same as finding someone who loves you." But I was stubborn. I thought I knew better. Derek proposed after a year. We had a small wedding. My father attended, of course, but I'd briefed him. No flashy gifts, no mentions of business, just a father giving away his daughter. Derek thought my dad was a retired farmer living modestly. We settled into what seemed like a comfortable life. Derek was doing well in sales, and I played the devoted wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I supported his career moves. When his company wanted to transfer him to another state, I packed up without complaint. When he needed to network and schmooze clients, I hosted dinner parties that made him look good. What Derek didn't know was that some of his biggest career wins weren't really his at all. That major contract with Morrison Food Services? My father made a phone call. That distribution deal that earned Derek a promotion? I'd mentioned Derek's company to one of my father's business partners over a lunch Derek knew nothing about. I wasn't trying to manipulate his career, I just wanted to help my husband succeed. I thought we were a team. But somewhere around year 6, things changed. Derek started working late, not occasionally, constantly. His phone became a fortress, angled away from me, passwords changed. He'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, with receipts in his pockets for jewelry I never received. I'm not stupid. I knew what was happening, but instead of confronting him immediately, I decided to watch and wait. Call it intuition, but something told me I needed to be smart about this. I started keeping records, photos, receipts, bank statements. I noticed money disappearing from our joint account, small amounts at first, then larger ones. Dinners at expensive restaurants on nights he said he was working late, hotel charges in our own city. And then one evening, I saw them together. I'd gone to pick up his forgotten briefcase from his office, and there they were in the parking lot, Derek and Courtney, his 26-year-old colleague, the way he touched her face, the way she laughed. It was intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. I sat in my car and cried for an hour, not just because my husband was cheating, but because I realized our entire marriage might have been a lie. Had he ever really loved me? Or had he just loved the idea of a quiet, supportive wife who didn't ask questions or make demands? The Derek I came home to that night was a stranger. He was cold, dismissive. He made comments about how I was lucky to have him and asked what I'd even do without his income. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Here I was, worth millions in my own right, being lectured about financial dependency by a man who'd unknowingly built his career on my family's connections. 6 months after I discovered the affair, Derek came home with divorce papers. He didn't even try to be gentle about it. He tossed them on the kitchen counter while I was making dinner and said, "I think we both know this hasn't been working. I'm offering you $50,000 to walk away quietly. That's more than generous considering you haven't contributed financially to this marriage." I just stared at him, wooden spoon still in my hand. The audacity was breathtaking. "The house is in my name," he continued, checking his watch like this conversation was inconveniencing him. "The savings are mostly my earnings. You can take your personal items, the $50,000, and we can both move on. I need an answer by next week." "I need time to think," I said quietly. He smirked. "Don't take too long, and maybe get a lawyer." "Oh wait, can you even afford one?" What Derek didn't know was that I'd already hired Patricia Vance, one of the best family law attorneys in the state. The consultation had been enlightening. Patricia had looked at my case files, all my documentation, and then at me with new respect. "Mrs. Castellano," she'd said, and I'd actually flinched at my real name. "We're going to destroy him." 2 weeks later, the real bombshell dropped. Derek showed up at the house with Courtney. She was glowing in that unmistakable way, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I'm starting a real family now," Derek announced. "Courtney's pregnant. We want to do this right, so I need you to sign these papers. Stop dragging this out." Courtney smiled at me with such condescension, it took everything in me not to react. "You should be grateful Derek's even giving you anything," she said, examining her fresh manicure. "Most men wouldn't be this generous." I looked at this woman, this girl, really, who'd helped destroy my marriage, and I felt something shift inside me, not heartbreak anymore, not even anger, just cold, crystal-clear determination. "I'll see you in court," I said simply. Derek's lawyer, Lawrence Mitchell, was exactly what you'd expect: aggressive, loud, known for crushing opposing parties in divorce proceedings. In our first mediation, he laid out their position with theatrical confidence. "My client has been the sole breadwinner throughout this marriage," Lawrence declared. "Mrs. Henderson," he refused to use my maiden name, "has no income, no career, no marketable skills. She's lived comfortably on my client's earnings for 8 years. The $50,000 offer is more than fair." They had no idea who they were dealing with. Patricia and I had decided to keep my background completely secret until trial. Let them underestimate me. Let them get comfortable in their arrogance. The depositions were brutal. Lawrence would ask questions designed to humiliate me. "What skills do you even have, Mrs. Henderson? Can you support yourself financially? Isn't it true you've been completely dependent on my client?" I answered quietly, truthfully, never showing my hand. Courtney started attending these meetings, sitting behind Derek, wearing clothes I knew cost more than the monthly mortgage payment. She'd whisper to him, and they'd both laugh. They thought they'd already won. The night before trial, Derek sent me a text. "Last chance. Take the 50 and walk away. You don't want to embarrass yourself in court." I didn't respond. I was too busy reviewing strategy with Patricia and preparing for what was about to happen. The courtroom was exactly as cold and impersonal as you'd imagine. Derek sat with Lawrence, both of them in expensive suits, looking confident and bored. Courtney was in the gallery, smiling like she was watching a show. I sat with Patricia, wearing a simple dress, no jewelry, looking every bit the meek housewife they expected. Lawrence presented their case first, and he was vicious. He painted me as a lazy dependent who'd contributed nothing to the marriage. He argued that Derek's career success was entirely his own doing, that I'd been a financial burden, that the $50,000 offer was overly generous given the circumstances. "Your Honor," Lawrence concluded, "my client is prepared to move on with his life. He's starting a family, building a future. We request that Mrs. Henderson receive minimal support and no claim to marital assets she didn't help create." The judge seemed to be listening carefully. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. Then it was Patricia's turn. She started with the affair: emails, text messages, photos. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Then came the financial records. Patricia laid it out meticulously. $183,000 spent on Courtney over 2 years. Jewelry, trips, rent for an apartment, designer clothes, all marital funds. Mr. Henderson claimed to be working late, Patricia said calmly. In reality, he was spending his wife's entitled share of their income on his mistress. Derek's face was turning red. Lawrence tried to object, to minimize, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then Patricia dropped the first real bomb. Your Honor, Mr. Henderson didn't just spend marital funds inappropriately, he committed insurance fraud. He listed Miss Courtney Brennan as his spouse on his company insurance policy 6 months ago, while still legally married to my client. The courtroom went silent. Derek's eyes went wide. Courtney looked like she might be sick. But we weren't done. Patricia pulled out more documents, hidden bank accounts, assets Derek had quietly transferred to friends, evidence that he'd been planning this divorce for years. He'd even hidden a recent promotion and $20,000 bonus. Your Honor, Patricia said, Mr. Henderson has systematically lied about his finances, committed fraud, and attempted to cheat my client out of her rightful share of marital assets. Lawrence was frantically whispering to Derek. The confidence had evaporated. They were in trouble, and they knew it. Then Patricia said the words that changed everything. Your Honor, I'd like to call a character witness for my client. The courtroom doors opened, and my father walked in. I'll never forget the look on Derek's face. He recognized the name when the bailiff announced it. Robert Castellano. And the color drained from his skin. Courtney pulled out her phone, frantically Googling, then her mouth fell open. Lawrence looked confused, then horrified as he realized who had just entered his courtroom. My father, distinguished, powerful, wearing a suit that cost more than Derek's car, walked to the witness stand with the kind of presence that comes from building an empire from nothing. Patricia began her questioning. Mr. Castellano, can you please describe your relationship with the plaintiff? Lillian is my daughter, my father said, his voice steady and strong. My only child. And can you tell the court about Lillian's background? What came next was beautiful. My father explained how I'd grown up in wealth but wanted a marriage based on love, not money. How I'd deliberately hidden my identity to find genuine connection. How I had a master's degree in agricultural economics from Cornell, but had deferred my career to support Derek's moves and promotions. Your Honor, my father continued, my daughter has a trust fund currently valued at $8 million. She also holds a 15% ownership stake in Castellano Agricultural Group, worth approximately $12 million. She gave up a position on our board of directors to move with her husband when his company transferred him. She sacrificed her career for his. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. Derek looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Courtney's face had gone from smug to horrified. She was realizing she'd destroyed her own life for a man who was about to lose everything. But my father wasn't finished. I should also mention, he said, looking directly at Derek, that 2 of Mr. Henderson's biggest career successes, the Morrison Food Services contract and the Brennan distribution deal, happened because my daughter asked me to make introductions. She never told him. She just wanted to help her husband succeed. Derek's face was white. Everything he'd been so proud of, everything he'd used to justify his arrogance, had been built on connections I'd provided. He was a mediocre salesman who'd gotten lucky because his wife had a powerful father. Patricia then presented evidence of every sacrifice I'd made, emails from job offers I'd turned down, records of networking events I'd arranged for Derek, letters of recommendation I'd secured from my father's associates. I'd been the invisible force behind Derek's success, and he'd been too arrogant to notice. The judge was visibly disgusted. When it came time for the ruling, her voice was ice. Mr. Henderson, I find your conduct in this matter to be reprehensible. You have lied, cheated, committed fraud, and attempted to defraud your wife of her rightful assets. This court rules as follows. The marital home will be sold, with Mrs. Henderson receiving 70% of proceeds. Mr. Henderson's pension will be divided, with Mrs. Henderson entitled to half. Mr. Henderson will pay substantial alimony for 5 years. Additionally, Mr. Henderson must repay the $183,000 spent on his affair, as those were marital funds used inappropriately. Derek looked broken. Courtney was crying in the gallery. Lawrence was gathering his papers in defeat. But there was one final twist. As we left the courtroom, Patricia pulled me aside with a smile. "I just got a call," she said. "Your father's company was in final negotiations with Derek's pharmaceutical firm for a $50 million distribution contract. Was being the key word. Your father withdrew this morning." I later learned that Derek's company fired him within 2 weeks. Losing a contract that size, combined with the scandal of his insurance fraud, made him a liability they couldn't afford. Courtney left him 3 months later. Apparently, a struggling, disgraced ex-sales director with massive debts wasn't quite the upgrade she'd imagined. That was 6 months ago. I took my settlement, about $900,000 total, and bought a beautiful property an hour from my father's main estate. I joined the family company, working in strategic development, and discovered I'm actually brilliant at it. Turns out, all those years of managing Derek's career and our household had given me skills I'd forgotten I had. Derek is working a low-level position at a smaller company now, struggling with legal bills, child support, and the alimony he owes me. I hear through mutual friends that he's humbled, bitter, and alone. I don't hate him anymore. I actually feel nothing when I think about him, and that's the best revenge of all. Here's what I learned. I hid my identity trying to find real love, but I learned that silence isn't always strength. I should have left when I saw the red flags. I should have valued myself enough to walk away from someone who didn't value me, but I don't regret how it ended. Justice was served in the most poetic way possible. Derek thought marrying a simple wife meant marrying a powerless one. He mistook my quietness for weakness, my humility for stupidity. That mistake cost him everything: his career, his reputation, his future, and hundreds of thousands of dollars he'll be paying me for years to come. The real victory wasn't the money. It was watching the exact moment in that courtroom when he realized I was never powerless at all. I chose to be modest. I chose to be humble. I chose to support him. But he was too arrogant to see that those were choices, not limitations. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most powerful. Never mistake kindness for weakness, and never, ever underestimate a woman who's been silent, because when she finally speaks, the truth she reveals can destroy empires. If this story of karma gave you satisfaction, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories of justice served, and drop a comment. Have you ever been underestimated? How did you prove them wrong? Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that arrogance always has a price. Next video is coming soon with another incredible story of revenge. Ring that bell so you don't miss it.